Hello guys. So we've had the Battlefield 2042 beta and we've been shown Hazard Zone and Battlefield Portal. So far I've been posting gameplay and I've been positive about the game's progress. I think that the 2042 beta is a solid base for a potentially incredible game in the future. It's safe to say really obvious bugs and visual glitches will probably be fixed from the beta. Will that be at launch or in a few weeks? We'll have to see. Today, I wanted to talk about all the issues I have so far, but also some potential fixes that are feasible with the time we have left. Performance, AI players, specialists, the tool UI, balance, all of it. This also includes Hazard Zone, Portal, and the base game. I'm going to be time-stamping everything, so just watch the bits that interest you. Let me know how you feel about 2042 and what I might have missed in this video. Now, Hazard Zone is of course the biggest reveal so far from 2042. To give a brief overview in case you haven't seen it, 32 players maximum, 8 squads drop into the multiplayer maps from 2042. There are AI enemies like Tarkov, and of course you can fight the other squads. You fight over satellite crashes that contain data drives, and then you have 2 windows of time during the game to extract and exchange the drives for in-game currency. You then spend the currency on weapons and gear for your next mission. But then what? When me and my squad have all the best gear, what is the end goal? There's no base to build or progression in the maps that you play. At the very least, I was expecting some sort of map progression, where as a new player you have a pool of a couple of maps, and as your gear improves you play in higher tier maps that have better loot and harder enemies. That would also solve the issue of players with higher tier loot wiping the floor with low tier players. My ultimate issue so far with this mode is long-term retention. My other thought is that this mode should have been released after the initial game release, giving people time to get used to the mechanics of the base game before being thrown into a more complex version of the game. Let me know your thoughts about this mode. Personally, I think it might need more time. Also, the choice to make this element not free to play is interesting, and if it isn't, what is going to be the free-to-play portion of the game? Maybe we have something else coming later. Next, let's tackle what I think is the largest issue with Battlefield 2042, and that is specialist balance and differentiating between them. Many people are already unhappy that there's no class system, which is a backbone of the Battlefield franchise, and then most importantly, every character on both teams looks exactly the same. Not to mention the fact that McKay was clearly the most popular choice thanks to his grapple ability. What's the point in taking Falk as a medic when any specialist can use the healing box, and Boris and Casper have pretty weak abilities also? So basically the beta was McKay field, and as split second you can't tell whether the McKay grappling towards you is friend or foe, so you shoot them anyway. Now some people are trying to suggest that we scrap the specialists altogether and go back to the original system. We all know it's far too late for that. But something very achievable in the time before release would be a simple color palette change depending on which team your specialist is on. US forces would be primarily yellow and Russian forces would be primarily green. Even if they added cosmetics, there could always be an underlying color underneath that would easily tell the teams apart. I also wouldn't be opposed to specialists being assigned to class roles, limiting their gadgets but still allowing players to choose what weapon they want. But a more pressing issue is the use of armor plates in normal multiplayer. A lot of people didn't even know about this gadget, but did you know that you can spawn with an armor plate and literally take an extra 25 health for free? I think it's not something that people will notice straight away, but I think especially with the release of the specialist Irish, who apparently has access to these plates automatically, I feel like the meta for 2042 is going to be to use plates to guarantee an advantage in 1v1 infantry engagements. It's comparable to dying to stopping power in Warzone, knowing that you would have won if they weren't using it. Personally, I think the plates should only be effective against explosive or vehicle damage. That way every player is on the same playing field when it comes to gunfights, just like every other Battlefield before this. As for reviving though, especially as a medic like Falk, they nerfed the long-range revive with the Threat Pistol, which I think I agree with. But we're back to static revives from BF5, which is a horrible way of doing it. No one wanted to revive in the beta. I hope they have some sort of middle ground that involves being able to charge your revive whilst on the way to the player. And here's how I think it should work. So yeah, imagine this is the threat. Imagine this is the threat pistol. 1, 2, 3, revive. And then a cooldown. So there you go. That's exactly how it should be. And just to be clear, I think the squad revive should stay exactly the same and be a really slow animation. But as a medic, I just want to be running around and reviving people as I go. Something else I believe that people are overlooking is the power of Casper's drone. It has full 3D spotting like from Battlefield 4. Right now in Conquest, no one really cares to use it, but imagine in a more concentrated mode like Breakthrough or Operations, one Casper player could literally 3D spot the entire team and no one would know about it. Personally, I believe that 3D spotted players should absolutely have some warning on the UI to let them know that they're spotted. The drone is very hard to see and hit, so a larger hitbox would also help. Up next, we've got AI. I saw a lot more AI players than I would have hoped in the beta, almost every round. Not to mention that the AI would be seemingly mostly useless. It felt dissatisfying either killing or being killed by AI players. You would get some crazy clip, only to watch the clip back and see you were just killing bots half the time. Or more annoyingly, you're running around focusing on AI whilst a real player sneaks up and kills you anyway. I feel like AI players should be an absolute last resort if the server is almost emptying, like it was less than 60% full or something. There may have been issues with players rejoining servers already in session, but frankly, I don't want to see AI players in normal multiplayer games at all. On the same track, we have the sentry turrets and the robot dogs, less effective than you would expect, but then occasionally would just beam you across the map when you least expect it. They should definitely be more easily destroyed by regular weapons, as it takes more than a full AR mag to kill them. Up next, we have performance. Now, performance was a major issue in the beta, but honestly, I'm just not surprised. I have a very decent PC from PC Specialist with an RTX 3090, and I was averaging around 80 to 90 FPS. I can't imagine what it's like for people on consoles and less capable PCs. It is to be expected though, with 128 players and the visuals have been upgraded, especially player models and terrain. For the release of the game, I'm expecting at best a 20% boost in performance over the beta. I really don't see what they can optimize further, and I think most people are probably waiting for crucial settings like DLSS to see any major improvements. I will of course be doing a full settings guide for the game on release. Now for the UI. First, let's go over some really obvious missing features that are probably just missing in the beta build. No minimap, no damage counters, no long-range headshot score, no scoreboard, and no grenade indicators. If any of these features are missing in the full game, I think a lot of people will be disappointed. Potentially, they might have removed the mid-game scoreboard to reduce toxicity during a match, but the end-game scoreboard needs to be there in my opinion. I think a major issue that myself and others are frustrated by is the blocky teal UI. The worst part about the UI would have to be the notifications at the top of the screen and in the kill feed itself. Simply white text would have been fine. Hopefully there'll be options in the future to fix this. As for the UI in general, there is currently no option to make the map bigger, a must for any previous Battlefield player, but luckily if they don't give us the option to change the color of the UI, if you go into accessibility options and change the colorblind mode to Tritonopia, you get this nice blue that feels more normal and less blinding. An option for a simple RGB slider to change the UI color and maybe the opacity would be fine. Now for the hit markers. They're massive! So big that it actually makes it hard to see what's behind them, especially when you get a headshot or a kill. Definitely need an option to make them smaller or just use the legacy versions. Also, if you try to spot enemies, a yellow icon would appear where they were, which is fine, but I also think if you just spot the ground, it should appear for your teammates anyway. Right now, it just doesn't seem to work. But did you notice that there is actually a compass when you aim down sight with most guns? There needs to be an option to have this on permanently. What's the point in calling out a direction to your teammate if they also then have to aim down sight and work out the direction after that? By that time, the command is probably irrelevant. DICE, please give us an active compass. Overall, I enjoyed the gunplay and the movement. There was clear inspiration from other titles, especially with the addition of tac sprinting and the ability to reload and rechamber without having to unscope. Snipers actually felt good apart from just one thing, the bullet velocity. 600 meters per second with drag is just not enough. Good players will struggle and casual players will just not bother. Everything else, such as fire rate, aim down sight speed, hip fire, bullet damage, felt just right for the sniper at least. On automatic weapons, visual recoil is still very apparent and frankly a little unnecessary, although as I mostly use snipers, I wasn't aware of how much spread there was on the auto weapons. It's hard to tell whether missing shots was to do with actual recoil, visual recoil, or spread. Maybe someone who played a lot of the auto weapons could enlighten me. As for movement, tack sprinting and sliding felt pretty reasonable. You can seemingly spam the crouch slide as much as you want, and you can also tactical sprint forever with no deficit. So maybe some adjustments on how often you can do certain actions is required, and making sure everything is readable from the third person is very important too. As for the plus system for changing attachments, for me it worked flawlessly and felt impactful as a mechanic. I actually used it regularly for switching scopes for medium and long range. Obviously some balance issues with switching magazine type being faster than reloading and getting extra ammo, but overall a great implementation of a new feature. I'm also very happy that they've gotten rid of attrition with slow health regen over time. Base ammo count was still an issue in some cases, like the DMR only having 2 reloads, but overall I didn't feel like I was constantly searching for ammo. Players also drop small ammo pouches as well, which is a really nice feature. Now for the audio, clearly the audio is not in its final stage. I had plenty of moments where someone was shooting me in the back 5 feet away and you wouldn't hear the unsuppressed gunshots. Also, it sounded like projectiles from vehicles had no explosive sound. You would just hear the whoosh from them traveling through the air. And footsteps, as usual, are an issue. Certain surfaces sounded like someone was running with wooden clogs, whilst others made it sound like they had no sound at all. Teammate footsteps were heard far more often than the enemies. And of course, again, a lot of this can be attributed to the beta build not being ready, because some sounds literally just don't play. Now for the vehicles, ground vehicle balance actually felt pretty good. I basically didn't touch a single vehicle in the beta, but I also didn't constantly die to them either. Apparently the helicopters are currently overpowered, according to pilots who play a lot, but I avoided the roof of the tall building like the plague anyway. Jets are almost useless, sadly, but for ground vehicles they definitely had to catch you in the open to do major damage quickly. I also noticed that vehicles would just kind of lag around in the sky like they used to in BF1, but again, I assume that is something that's going to get fixed from the beta. I also like the fact that you can snipe people out of most of the seats in almost every vehicle other than the tanks. I appreciate that. Finally, I just wanted to touch on Portal as I've already made a full video on this mode, but I can only see this as an absolute win. Personally, I think people would have been happy with the base game and just Hazard Zone on its own, so the Portal mode is just a bonus. I think the developers knew that 2042 base game was going to be polarizing for veteran Battlefield players who just wanted another class-based shooter. Portal basically allows you to get rid of any of the aspects of gameplay you don't like and gives communities a chance to create servers for free. Although I think there's still the issues of servers going offline unless one person stays in the server 24/7. I also believe that Portal could be the rebirth of competitive Battlefield, as people can curate competitive server settings however they like, and hopefully we'll be able to hold community tournaments with absolute freedom. This is all under the impression that Portal is actually fully working on release, and I truly hope that that is the case. And I think that just about covers everything. I wrote down a ton of stuff during the beta that I wanted to talk about, and I think this encompasses everything all into one relatively concise video. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything you think is really important to talk about and is a major issue that I should have covered. And if you agree with some of the things I've said, then give it a like or give it a dislike if you disagree and let me know why. Overall, I've had way more fun than I've had disappointment. Lots of people will disagree with me, but this is giving me the most BF4 vibes of any other game. And hey, maybe with the addition of Portal, they might add in the BF4 maps and we'll actually have BF4 in 2042. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and if you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe for more 2042 content coming very soon, in like 3 weeks or something. Cheers.